Most people think warmth was the key to survival in the past. Thicker blankets, heavier covers, more layers. But, history tells a quieter, stranger truth. In many parts of the world, the people who survived longest weren't wrapped in blankets at all. They were sleeping on mats, low to the ground, simple, uncomfortable by modern standards, and honestly far more effective than anyone expected. This isn't a story about comfort. It's a story about understanding the ground beneath you, and how ignoring it cost lives. Blankets look like protection, soft fibres, trapped heat, a barrier against cold air. But early survival environments were rarely dry, sealed, or predictable. Floors were dirt, stone, packed earth, sometimes wood laid directly over soil. At night, those surfaces pulled heat from the body non-stop. Blankets worked above the body, but they failed below it. Cold doesn't only come from air, it rises from the ground. Moisture seeps upward. Stone and earth act like heat sinks, draining warmth hour after hour. A blanket on top could feel warm at first, but underneath, body heat was being stolen slowly, silently, and constantly. People would wake stiff, shaking, sick, or not wake at all. This wasn't always labelled as hypothermia. It showed up as weakness, fever, lung illness, infections that never healed. The blanket didn't look like the enemy, but it wasn't solving the real problem. The ground is unforgiving. Even in warm climates, it stays cooler than the human body. In damp regions, it becomes dangerous. Sleeping directly on soil exposes the body to cold transfer, moisture, insects and bacteria. Early communities learned this the hard way. Those who slept directly on the ground, even with heavy coverings, lost energy faster. Their sleep was broken. Their bodies never fully recovered. Over time, this meant slower healing, weaker immune response, and higher death rates during illness or injury. Survival wasn't about staying cozy. It was about reducing energy loss. And that's where mats entered the story. A mat wasn't about warmth. It was about separation. Woven grass mats, reed mats, palm fibre mats, straw mats, bark mats, and later cloth mats all served the same purpose. They lifted the body just enough to break direct contact with the ground. That small distance mattered more than people realized. Mats trapped air beneath the sleeper. Air is a natural insulator. Even a thin layer slowed heat loss dramatically. The mat also blocked moisture rising from soil, which prevented the slow chilling that blankets could never stop. Unlike thick bedding, mats dried quickly. They could be aired in the sun. They didn't hold dampness overnight. That meant fewer respiratory problems and fewer skin infections. People slept better, and better sleep meant better survival. Blankets absorb moisture. Once damp, they lose insulating power and become heavy and cold. In early shelters with smoke, rain leaks or condensation, blankets often stayed wet. Mats didn't. A mat could be flipped, shaken, or replaced easily. It didn't rely on thickness. It relied on structure. More importantly, mats worked with the body, not against it. They stabilized sleeping temperature. They reduced energy loss. They supported posture. Even spine alignment mattered over long winters or long journeys. In survival history, small efficiencies saved lives. Mats were one of them. Nomadic groups figured this out early. When you move often, you can't carry heavy bedding. What you need is something light, durable, and effective. Mats became essential gear. They rolled easily. They worked in deserts, forests, and grasslands. They could be stacked for colder nights or used alone in warm climates. Travellers slept higher, drier, and safer than those who relied on blankets alone. Explorers, traders, and long-distance walkers noticed something important. When sickness spread through camps, the people sleeping on raised mats recovered faster. The ones on the ground struggled. No one wrote this down as science at the time. It was survival knowledge, passed by experience. Sleeping on mats reduced more than just cold exposure. It actually lowered contact with insects, parasites, and rodents, you know. It also improved airflow around the body, which is something folks might not think about. Mats reduced pressure points that caused circulation problems during those long rest periods too. Modern sleep science now confirms what history already knew. Ground contact increases heat loss, and even just a slight elevation improves thermal regulation. Firm surfaces reduce muscle strain. Mats weren't primitive. They were practical. As societies industrialized, comfort started to replace function. Beds were raised, mattresses thickened, blankets became symbols of safety rather than just tools. But in survival conditions, the old rules still apply. Modern disaster shelters, refugee camps, and emergency responses still rely on mats for a reason. Relief agencies prioritize ground insulation before blankets because without separation from the ground, warmth is wasted. History repeats itself quietly, doesn't it? Blankets failed because they addressed the wrong problem. Mats worked because they solved the real one. Survival has never been about softness. It's about understanding physics, environment, and the human body. The people who lived the longest weren't always the warmest. They were the smartest sleepers. Sometimes survival isn't about adding more layers. It's about knowing where to place them. If you enjoy uncovering the forgotten logic behind how humans survived the past, go ahead and subscribe to Survival History Unfiltered. Share this story with someone who thinks survival is all about comfort. And stay curious, because, well, history still has secrets worth listening to.